the DABS tells me there's 30 distilleries in the state.
That's insane.
So I don't know if there's 10 that are kind of just behind closed doors, but yeah, there's it's boomed quite a bit since High West in 2006. And it's I mean there's tons of craft breweries, and it's getting to be a pretty happening scene as far as that goes. I will say the new director of the DABS is very friendly to local producers. They just started a program. It was Proudly Utah, and they're kind of, yeah, they have a specific representative that works with all the local manufacturers, the distilleries and the breweries. And in their newer stores, they're setting up sections that highlight just the Utah made products, which has been great. Yeah, so it seems to be getting a lot more friendly, and laws seem to be getting a little relaxed and more on par with laws you'd find in the rest of the country. But
that's amazing. Yeah, I know here in Texas we have almost every grocery store has like a Texas section as well, especially when it comes to beer. If you go to liquor stores, it's spirits, but wine as well. So I'm glad that Utah also is now be like, shop local, drink local, that kind of amazing things.
Yes, yeah, and the brewers here have a really great brewing guild. We're still working on trying to form a distillers guild here and get the distilleries together and kind of get all of us together to have a little bit more of a lobbying voice.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, those are so important too, because you have, you could talk shop. You can be like, hey, I had this problem. How did you kind of get past it? Oh, I did that. That happened to me this many times ago, or, bottles or distribution or whatever it is. But it's just good to have that collaboration between all the different distillers, because yes, you're all making roughly the same thing, but you're all doing it in a different way, and you're all putting your own different spin on it. So, it's amazing that you guys are, working on getting that together.
Yes, and I look at like, I don't know if you've been to Colorado or talked to anyone from Colorado, but they have a very active distillers guild in Colorado, and I grew up in Colorado, so I kind of I look at that and I think that's kind of the model that we want to emulate. But it's trying to get people on board and get people who haven't necessarily agreed in the past to kind of put their differences aside for the common good. So yeah.
Well, so who are some of the other distillers that you kind of, like you said, you've only been doing this a year now. Who have been some that you've kind of leaned on or even asked for, opinions or just different things like that?
Yeah, I have not, unfortunately, I haven't visited all the distilleries, even in the Salt Lake area. Majority of the distilleries are going to be right here in Salt Lake, because that's where the majority of the population is. But I've gotten along great with everyone I've met, and they've all been more than willing to help out. We also have Solstice Malt, which is Utah's only malt house. He's like 5 minutes up the road from me, so he's been great. There's James over at Sugar House. He's helped quite a bit, gave me a lot of pointers. I mean, and I always recommend, if you like bourbon, if you like our bourbon, to head over to his, because he's doing a lot of cool things with bourbon. He just released a distilled beer. It's not technically whiskey because it has hops in it, but it's one of the most amazing things I've tasted, because it has all the floral characteristics of hops without any of the kind of bitterness. And I'm not sure how he pulled it off, but I thought it was really great.
I definitely have to reach out and figure out what that is, because that sounds amazing.
Yeah, he did it as an experimental batch, and I don't know if he's going to make more of it, but I hope he does, because I really liked it.
Nice.
And then we've Holy Stone is really great. Their whole team came over and did a tour. They're kind of, and I've been on their tour. It's a really cool tour. The owner is a retired naval aviator, and
Hmm.
they've got a ship's watertight door to go into their distilling space, and they do a whole charcuterie board and everything with it, with the tasting. Um, and their focus seems to be a lot on some of the botanical spirits. Uh, and they do a great Navy strength gin. They do an absinthe.
Ooh.
They also do a sochu, uh,
Oh, really?
which is, yeah.
I've had it because my brother was in Korea teaching kids how to speak English, and he would bring some home. Um, I'm not a fan, but I know there's a lot of people out there that are fans. So I'm glad that someone over here is making soju for people that do enjoy that.
Yes, I wasn't necessarily a fan, but I bought a bottle because I thought my wife would be. So
Yeah.
yeah, turns out she wasn't a fan either. But I think it's good for what it is.
Right.
It's just not my thing. Yeah.
Exactly. I think the same thing about sake. I'm like, it's just not like I understand why people do enjoy it. There's some out there that are good. I'm just on the whole not a fan of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not gonna turn it away, but I'm not also gonna be like, you know what I'm really craving? Some sake, like or
Yeah.
soju. It's just not gonna happen.
Yeah. That's definitely true. Let me see here. There's also New World Distillery up in Eden. They're a little ways out, and he has a passion for all things agave. So
Ooh.
he does distills his vodka in house, and he starts with an agave base. So pretty much almost everything he does starts with an agave base. Um, so and he's doing a lot of cool things. He did a cherry liqueur that is really phenomenal.
Hmm.
And I've been up there and talked to them, and then Dented Brick is, I think, maybe the third largest distillery in the state. But they came over and visited our distillery, and I went over, visited them. Their distillers, I think, came from High West, but they're doing a ton of stuff at Dented Brick. So yeah,
I love that.
yeah,
Well, I do wonder when it comes to the agave, and I mean, obviously people think it's going to be tequila, but it has, the rules of tequila have to be from the Jalisco area in Mexico. Otherwise, same thing with champagne. It has to be from the Champagne region over in France. Otherwise, it's just sparkling wine,
yeah,
unless it's prosecco or cava, which is Italy and Spain. But I do wonder when it comes to that, considering the popularity now that tequila is having again, how much we're going to have more just agave based stuff here in America or even in other countries that, yes, it's for the most part not tequila because of the fact that it's not from, Mexico, but has everything else checking the boxes that is agave based or tequila. So I'm curious how much more we're going to be delving into that, in the next few years.
yeah. I think you'll probably see a lot of that as the ability to supply tequila kind of gets outstripped by the demand for tequila. And I know it was he had started before they made mezcal a protected term, and
Right.
now mezcal has to be made in Mexico. So he was I think he was started out as branded as mezcal, and then they went through a lot of machinations to end up with agave based spirit as the category. And I kind of wish they'd come up with something a little easier to say. That's a little bit of a mouthful, but yeah, I think you'll see a lot more of that. We don't do anything like that here, but
Right.
I know I think it's going to be a growing sector. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. I mean, so you guys do make, gins, vodkas, bourbons, and then you also have a coffee liqueur. Obviously, you just said you probably will not be, messing with the agave plant or anything, but what are some other things that you guys have been kind of working on so that people can maybe look forward to that in the future?
So yeah, so in purchasing it, I got all his recipes and kind of his set products.
Hmm.
We've of course started rebranding them and moved to the high desert label for our gins. I also played with the botanicals a bit on the gin, pretty much the same botanicals, but I I would say his gin was aimed in the right direction, but was just not quite exactly where I wanted it to be.
Mm.
We just adjusted the sage and added angelica root and adjusted a few of the other botanicals. And I think it's really balanced out the palate quite a bit. But the beginning goal for the gin was the high mountain desert after a rainfall. So we were trying to mimic that smell in the flavor of the gin. And I think drawing back on the sage a little bit and then adding the angelica root really helped, because angelica root serves as a fixative, which basically keeps your flavor stable over time. But it also really helps spread out the botanicals and highlight all of the others. Whereas the initial gin, you kind of got a punch of everything up front and then very little on the mid palate and a little bit of a bitter finish. With the angelica, it really lets you highlight all the other botanicals that are present in the gin and gives you that rounder kind of mid palate. And I think really kind of hits that mark of the high mountain desert in a sense of the Utah high mountain desert that we were hoping to capture. I think in the future, we're looking to take that and kind of move to a seasonal product and add a seasonal gin that will change every year. And
cool.
basically experiment with different flavor combinations and adjusting the botanicals there. Maybe summer this year or fall next year, and kind of highlight different flavors that go with those seasons. On the whiskey front, unfortunately, the previous owner stopped distilling his bourbon about a year before he sold. So we just dumped his last barrel of aged bourbon last week, and we're going to go through those bottles. We'll probably have about 8 months at our current sales rate where we won't have any bourbon until the barrels that we've been putting up are going to start coming to age. And in the interim, I'm looking at some finishing, and we're just getting done with an Amburana finished bourbon. And it is a mix of some of that last barrel that we dumped and a few of our newer barrels and some sourced whiskey from Texas. Actually. And then we also added in a little bit of single malt, and it does some interesting things with the Amburana. When Amburana first kind of came out, I was kind of enamored with it. I smelled the wood and I was like, this smells amazing. And then I've probably got like 10 bottles of different Amburana finished whiskeys at home. And it feels, every one of them to me felt like it was too much Amburana. It was like being hit over the head with the Amburana. And it kind of got very astringent and very, very pungent. And with our finishing, we're going to be very light with the Amburana finish. And I think it does a lot of really cool stuff to the whiskey. So I'm really excited about that release. We'll actually be bottling that tomorrow. And then the state actually has to list it on their DABS stores as a special order product before we can actually sell it. But it should have been approved July, so I'm hoping we can get it on the shelf, at least distillery only, in August.
I love that.
Yeah.
So you guys have on your Instagram a Sippin' with Sasquatch, which you guys have a different recipe every Thursday, Thirsty Thursdays. Where did this idea come from? Because I love it, first off. And then what has been your favorite recipe that you guys have put out?
Oh, man. So really, I came up with the Spirits of the Wasatch as the name.
Right.
As a LLC name, just to do an asset transfer. When we initially were purchasing the distillery, I was fine with the name Hammer Spring. But my brother-in-law heard it the first time and he was like, oh, you need to change that name. And I was like, I don't know why. But about 2 months in, I was talking to vendors and representatives